Admiral Zexterra stood before the massive holographic display in the command center of the hegemony's most powerful dreadnought, the Eternal Dominion. The blue-skinned Kethari officer's four eyes tracked the movements of 1,000 ships spread across the void of space. Each vessel represented the pinnacle of military engineering from across the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The combined fleet stretched for hundreds of thousands of kilometers, a sight that had never failed to inspire fear in any species unfortunate enough to witness it. "Status report," Zexterra commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. Commander Veltar, a tall insectoid Zek with compound eyes that glittered like emeralds, approached with measured steps. His mandibles clicked nervously as he consulted his datapad. "Admiral, all fleet divisions report ready. The Kethari supremacy has contributed 300 vessels, including our newest Plasma Lance destroyers. The Zek Collective brings 400 ships with their bioweapon capabilities. The Saurian Empire has deployed 200 of their massive dreadnoughts, and the Ethereal Consortium has provided their 100 most advanced energy manipulation cruisers." Zexterra nodded, her satisfaction evident. This was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The galactic hegemony had spent 3 standard years preparing for this moment, uniting former enemies under a single banner with one shared purpose: the complete annihilation of humanity. "And our intelligence on the human defenses?" she asked. Veltar's compound eyes dimmed slightly. "Limited, Admiral. Our long-range scouts report approximately 50 vessels defending the Sol system. Most appear to be of simple metallic construction, lacking any visible energy shielding or advanced weapon systems. Their largest ship appears to be roughly 1/10 the size of our smallest frigate." The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong about these reports, but she couldn't identify what. The humans had appeared in galactic affairs only 2 standard years ago, emerging from their isolated system with ships that seemed primitive by hegemony standards. Yet somehow, these crude vessels had managed to defeat advanced scouts from multiple civilizations. Each encounter left no survivors to report what had actually happened. "Perhaps the humans have hidden reinforcements," suggested Veltar. "Species often conceal their true military capacity." Zexterra dismissed the concern with a wave of her elongated hand. "Even if they have 10 times the reported number, they would still be outnumbered 20 to 1. Their technology appears to be based on kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. Our energy shields will render such weapons useless." She turned to address the bridge crew. "Signal all fleet commanders. We proceed with the final phase of Operation Stellar Cleansing. The humans will serve as an example to any other species that might consider challenging hegemony authority." The massive fleet began its final approach toward the Sol system. Each ship in the Armada had been specifically chosen for maximum destructive capability. The Kethari vessels carried planet-cracking plasma cannons that could turn worlds into molten slag. The Zek ships housed biological weapons designed to corrupt atmospheres and make worlds uninhabitable for millennia. The Saurian dreadnoughts mounted gravitational disruptors capable of tearing apart space stations and orbital installations. The ethereal ships could manipulate matter at the quantum level, disintegrating targets without leaving trace evidence. As they traveled through hyperspace, Admiral Zexterra reviewed the intelligence files on humanity once more. The species had evolved on a world they called Earth, a planet with gravity nearly twice that experienced by most spacefaring civilizations. This explained their compact, dense physiology, but it also suggested they were adapted for survival in harsh conditions. Their ships appear to be constructed from refined metal alloys rather than the energy matter composites used by advanced civilizations. What puzzled the Admiral most was humanity's apparent disregard for standard galactic protocols. When the hegemony had sent diplomatic envoys demanding submission, the humans had simply refused, not with elaborate justifications or attempts at negotiation, but with a simple message that translated roughly to no. When trade embargoes were imposed, humans had ignored them and continued developing their technology in isolation. When military intimidation was attempted, human ships had appeared wherever hegemony forces gathered, observing silently before disappearing. Admiral, called Navigation Officer Shundao, a pale, ethereal whose translucent body flickered with internal energy patterns. We are approaching the edge of the Sol system. Should we proceed with standard intimidation protocols? Zextera considered the question. Standard protocol involved a massive show of force designed to terrorize the target species into surrender. However, every attempt at intimidation had been met with eerie silence from the humans. No, we proceed directly to combat formation. Signal all ships to prepare for immediate engagement. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the outer edge of the Sol system, near a gas giant the humans called Jupiter. Immediately, every sensor array began scanning for enemy vessels. The results were exactly as intelligence had predicted. 50 human ships of varying sizes, positioned in a loose defensive formation around the inner planets. Magnify the lead human vessel, ordered Zextera. The holographic display zoomed in on what appeared to be the flagship of the human fleet. The ship was roughly cylindrical, with angular projections that seemed to serve as weapon mounts. Its surface was a dull gray color, showing clear evidence of welding marks and external reinforcement structures. To hegemony eyes, it looked like something constructed in a primitive shipyard using crude manufacturing techniques. Visual scan complete, reported sensor technician Mordak, a six-armed saurian whose scaled hide gleamed under the bridge lighting. Human vessels show no energy shielding, no gravitational manipulation capabilities, and no detectable bioweapon systems. They appear to be using chemical-based reaction drives for propulsion. Zextera felt a wave of disappointment. After 3 years of preparation and the assembly of the greatest military force in galactic history, the humans appear to be offering only token resistance. Open a communication channel. Let's offer them one final chance to surrender. The main view screen activated, showing the interior of a human flagship's bridge. Admiral Zextera found herself looking at a human male seated in what appeared to be a simple command chair. He wore a dark blue uniform with minimal ornamentation, and his expression was calm, almost serene. Behind him, other humans worked at control stations that seemed primitive compared to hegemony technology. "I am Admiral Zextera of the Galactic Hegemony," she announced, her voice carrying the full weight of authority. "You are completely outmatched. Surrender immediately, and your species will be granted the mercy of quick extermination. Resist, and your deaths will be prolonged and agonizing." The human admiral studied her for a long moment with dark eyes that seemed to hold depths she couldn't fathom. When he spoke, his voice was steady and carried no trace of fear. "I am Admiral Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. Your message is acknowledged. Our response is the same as always." "No, you fool," Zextera snarled, her blue skin darkening with anger. "You have 50 ships against 1,000. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. You cannot possibly hope to achieve victory." Admiral Chin's expression didn't change. "You're probably right about the odds, but you made one critical error in your intelligence gathering." "And what error is that?" "You assume that our ships work the same way yours do. They don't." Chin gestured to someone off-screen. "Fire when ready." The communication channel went dead. Zextera stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to her weapons officer. "Target their flagship. Full power plasma volley. Show them the price of defying the hegemony." Target acquired. Firing. The Eternal Dominion's main plasma cannon charged with a sound like rolling thunder. Energy sufficient to vaporize a small moon lanced through space toward the human flagship. The beam struck the ship's hull directly, engulfing it in a brilliant blue-white explosion that should have reduced the vessel to its component atoms. When the plasma dispersed, the human ship remained intact. Not just intact, but apparently undamaged. Its dull, gray hull showed no signs of scoring, no evidence that it had just been struck by one of the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. Impossible, whispered Veltor. Nothing can withstand a direct plasma cannon strike without energy shielding. Zextera's 4 eyes widened in shock. Scan that ship again. Find out what kind of shielding they're using. Admiral called Mordak, his 6 arms moving rapidly over his sensor controls. I'm detecting no energy signatures consistent with defensive shielding. The ship appears to have absorbed the plasma blast through purely physical means. Before Zextera could respond, new contacts appeared on the sensor display. The human ships were launching what appeared to be small projectiles toward the hegemony fleet. Each vessel was firing dozens of these objects, which moved far too slowly to be effective missiles. Kinetic projectiles, observed Veltor. Primitive slug throwers. Our shields will stop them easily. The first wave of human projectiles reached the outermost hegemony ships. The results were immediate and catastrophic. Instead of bouncing harmlessly off energy shields, the projectiles punched through them as if they didn't exist. Worse, each impact released explosions far more powerful than should have been possible from simple kinetic weapons. Report, demanded Zextera as alarm klaxons began wailing throughout the fleet. Multiple ships reporting hull breaches called the communications officer. The Zek cruiser Hive Mother has lost structural integrity. The Saurian destroyer scale render is venting atmosphere. These weapons are penetrating our shields like they're not even there. Admiral Zextera watched in growing horror as more human projectiles found their targets. Each impact caused damage far beyond what should have been possible. Ships that had withstood assaults from entire planetary defense networks were being crippled by what appeared to be simple metal slugs. Full fleet engagement, she ordered. All ships, maximum firepower. Destroy those human vessels before they can fire again. 1,000 of the galaxy's most advanced warships opened fire simultaneously. The space between the two fleets filled with energy beams, plasma bolts, gravitational distortions, and exotic matter streams. The combined firepower was sufficient to sterilize entire planets. Yet the human ships continued to advance through the maelstrom apparently unaffected. Their armor, gasped sensor technician Mordak. It's not just metal. I'm detecting quantum-level structural modifications that I don't understand. It's as if their hull material exists partially outside normal space-time. The human ships returned fire with another volley of their kinetic weapons. This time, Zextera could see that each projectile was surrounded by a faint distortion field that seemed to bend space around it. Where these projectiles struck, hegemony vessels didn't just take damage. They ceased to exist in localized areas, leaving perfectly spherical holes that appear to have been removed from reality rather than destroyed. Signal all ships to fall back to defensive formation, ordered Zextera, her voice tight with panic. Request immediate reinforcement from the reserve fleet. Admiral, called the communications officer. We're receiving a message from the human flagship. Admiral Chun appeared on the screen again, his expression unchanged from their first conversation. Around him, his bridge crew worked with the same calm efficiency they had shown before the battle began. Admiral Zextera, he said, this is your final warning. Withdraw your forces from this system immediately. You are outmatched. Outmatched, Zextera shrieked. You have 50 ships against 1,000. How can you possibly claim we are outmatched? Chen's slight smile held no warmth. Because you still don't understand what you're facing. Our ships don't just use different technology. They operate on completely different principles. Every assumption you made about space combat is wrong. As if to emphasize his point, the human vessels suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds. According to every known law of physics, such acceleration should have turned their crews into paste against the rear bulkheads. Instead, the ships moved as if inertia was merely a suggestion they chose to ignore. The human fleet split into smaller groups, each targeting a different section of the hegemony formation. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, as if all 50 ships were controlled by a single mind. They struck with precision that seemed almost supernatural, their weapons finding the exact points where hegemony defenses were weakest. Within minutes, The outer ring of the hegemony formation had been completely destroyed. 300 ships, vessels that represented the technological pinnacle of their respective civilizations, had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The inner formations began to waver as panic spread through the fleet. All ships transmitted Zexterra on the fleet frequency. Maintain formation. Do not break ranks. We still have numerical superiority. But even as she spoke, she could see her fleet disintegrating. The ethereal consortium ships were attempting to retreat into hyperspace, only to discover that the humans had somehow disrupted the local space-time continuum. The Zek collective vessels were trying to release their biological weapons, but the toxins seemed to have no effect on the human ships' hull materials. The Saurian Empire dreadnoughts were firing their gravitational disruptors at maximum power, yet the human vessels continued to move as if gravity was optional. Admiral Chen's image appeared on every screen throughout the hegemony fleet. This is your final warning. Surrender now, or be destroyed. We take no pleasure in this, but we will defend our system. Zexterra cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. Prepare the planet killer. Target their home world. If we can't defeat their fleet, we'll destroy what they're protecting. Admiral, said Veltar quietly, perhaps we should consider I am not surrendering to a species that builds ships out of scrap metal. Zextara roared. Charge the planet killer. Full power. The Eternal Dominion's primary weapon began to charge. This was not just a plasma cannon. It was a directed energy system capable of igniting a planet's atmosphere and boiling its oceans. It had been used only 3 times in galactic history, each time to make examples of species that had defied the hegemony. As the weapon charged, Admiral Chen's final message reached every ship in the fleet. You have made your choice. God help you all. The human ships suddenly stopped their attack and began to withdraw. For a moment, Zexterra thought they were retreating. Then she saw what they were actually doing. The 50 human vessels were forming a perfect sphere around a single point in space, roughly halfway between the two fleets. What are they doing? She wondered aloud. The answer came when every human ship fired simultaneously at the center of their formation. Their kinetic weapons met at the exact center point and merged into something that defied description. Space itself seemed to fold inward, creating a distortion that grew larger with each passing second. Admiral called Shundal, his ethereal form flickering with alarm. I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies. Whatever they're doing, it's affecting the fundamental structure of local space-time. The distortion continued to expand until it was larger than any ship in either fleet. Then, without warning, it moved. Not like a ship or projectile, but like a living thing that flowed through space. It engulfed the first line of hegemony vessels instantly, and wherever it touched, ships simply vanished. Not destroyed, not vaporized, vanished, as if they had never existed at all. The thing continued to grow and move, consuming everything in its path. Weapons fire passed through it without effect. Ships attempting to flee were caught and consumed as easily as those that tried to fight. Within moments, half the hegemony fleet had simply ceased to exist. Emergency, jump to hyperspace, ordered Zexterra. All ships, full retreat. But it was too late. The expanding distortion reached the Eternal Dominion just as its planet-killer weapon finished charging. The massive energy discharge that should have been capable of destroying worlds was absorbed into the anomaly and vanished without trace. Admiral Zexterra's last sight was of Admiral Chen's calm face on her view screen. You should have listened, he said softly. We tried to warn you. Then the bridge, the ship, and Admiral Zexterra herself were consumed by an impossible geometry that existed outside the normal laws of physics. The greatest military fleet in galactic history ceased to exist in the span of 37 minutes. In the aftermath, 50 human ships hung motionless in the void where 1,000 alien vessels had been moments before. The only evidence of the battle was a faint distortion in space-time that would puzzle physicists for generations to come. Admiral Chen sat in his command chair, looking tired. Around him, his crew began the process of standing down from combat alert. No one spoke of victory or celebration. They had done what was necessary to protect their home, nothing more. Signal Earth Command, Chun ordered quietly. Tell them the threat has been neutralized. All enemy vessels destroyed or removed. As the human fleet began its journey back toward Earth, a single automated probe launched from the flagship. It carried a simple message that would be broadcast on all known galactic frequencies. Humanity wishes to live in peace. Do not force us to defend ourselves again. The message would reach the core worlds of the galactic hegemony in 6 standard months. When it did, the galaxy would learn a new truth. There are things in the universe more dangerous than the most advanced military technology, and humanity had learned to harness them. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic fear had begun. 6 months after the complete destruction of the hegemony's grand fleet, the galaxy found itself in a state of unprecedented chaos. The news of the fleet's total annihilation had spread through hyperspace communication networks like wildfire, reaching every civilized world within weeks. The impossible had happened. 1,000 of the most advanced warships ever constructed had been destroyed by 50 primitive vessels from a species no one had taken seriously. Council leader Thaimal of the Kethuri Supremacy stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, her blue skin pale with stress and her 4 eyes darting nervously around the vast assembly chamber. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the tiered seating, their voices creating a cacophony of fear and confusion that echoed off the crystalline walls. Order! Order! Thaimal called, her voice amplified by the chamber's acoustic systems. We must discuss the human situation rationally. Rationally, shrieked Ambassador Kexmoth of the Zek Collective, his compound eyes glittering with barely contained panic. They made 1,000 ships disappear. How do we rationalize something like that? The chamber erupted in voices again. Some species called for immediate military action, demanding that every available ship be sent to destroy humanity before they could become an even greater threat. Others insisted that diplomacy was the only sane option, arguing that any species capable of such destruction must be appeased at all costs. A few representatives suggested abandoning the galaxy entirely rather than face whatever technology the humans possessed. Thaimal activated the chamber's silence field, cutting off all sound except her own voice. We have received confirmation from 17 independent sources. Admiral Zexter's fleet engaged 50 human vessels at the edge of the Sol system. None of our ships survived the encounter. Long-range sensors detected massive space-time distortions, followed by nothing. What about survivors? Asked Ambassador Velnoth of the Saurian Empire, his massive reptilian form hunched with worry. Escape pods? Emergency transmissions? None, replied Thaimal grimly. It's as if the entire fleet simply ceased to exist. Our scientists have analyzed the sensor data, and they can't explain what they observed. The readings suggest localized violations of several fundamental physical laws. Dr. Zephyra, the Ethereal Consortium's chief scientist, rose from her seat with a shimmer of displaced energy. Her translucent form flickered as she accessed data streams directly through her consciousness. I have completed my analysis of the available evidence. The humans appear to have weaponized something that exists outside our understanding of physics. The distortions recorded during the battle suggest manipulation of quantum foam at a macro scale. Speak plainly, demanded Ambassador Kexmoth. What does that mean for our survival? Zephyra's form stabilized as she focused on delivering her explanation in simple terms. Imagine reality as a fabric. Normal weapons tear holes in this fabric. Whatever the humans used appears to have the ability to selectively remove portions of the fabric entirely. Ships caught in these areas don't explode or break apart. They simply stop existing. The silence that followed this explanation was more terrifying than the previous cacophony. Representatives stared at each other with the growing realization that they were facing something unprecedented in galactic history. Every military doctrine, every strategic assumption, every understanding of warfare had become obsolete in the face of human capabilities. There must be limits, insisted General Mortak of the Hegemony Military Command. The scarred Kethari officer's cybernetic implants glowed as he processed tactical data. No weapon is absolute. They only had 50 ships. If we gather enough forces, we can overwhelm whatever technology they possess. With what forces? Asked Thymal bitterly. The Grand Fleet represented the combined military might of 4 of our most powerful civilizations. Every ship was equipped with the most advanced weapons and defensive systems available. They lasted 37 minutes. Ambassador Velnoth activated his personal data display, showing a holographic representation of the galactic map. Our intelligence networks report that human ships have been spotted in 17 different systems since the battle. They appear to be conducting reconnaissance missions, observing our military installations and industrial centers. Observing, Dr. Zephyra's form flickered with concern. Or targeting? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. If the humans were cataloging hegemony assets, it could mean they were preparing for a wider campaign. The thought of their reality-warping weapons being deployed against populated worlds sent waves of terror through the assembled representatives. We need to consider the possibility of surrender, said Ambassador Trendal of the Pacifist Coalition, her soft voice barely audible through the chamber's sound system. If we cannot defeat them, perhaps we can negotiate coexistence. General Mortak's cybernetic eye flared red. Surrender? To a species that builds ships out of scrap metal? The hegemony has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We will not bow to upstart primitives. Primitives who eliminated our greatest fleet without losing a single vessel, Trendal reminded him. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. Thymal studied the data streaming across her personal display. Intelligence reports from across the galaxy painted a disturbing picture. Human ships appeared wherever hegemony forces gathered, observing silently before vanishing. Trade routes that passed near human space had reported strange phenomena. Cargo vessels losing entire sections of their hulls to perfectly spherical voids, space stations developing mysterious empty zones where equipment and personnel simply weren't there anymore. The humans sent a message after the battle, Thymal announced, drawing the attention of the entire assembly. A simple transmission broadcast on all frequencies. Humanity wishes to live in peace. Do not force us to defend ourselves again. A threat, growled General Mortak. They're threatening us. Or a warning, suggested Dr. Zephyra. Perhaps they genuinely prefer peaceful coexistence, but are prepared to defend themselves if necessary. Ambassador Kexmotha's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. We can't trust them. No species develops weapons like that for purely defensive purposes. They're planning something. Thymal activated a secure communication channel, connecting the chamber to the hegemony's most classified intelligence network. Agent Silvera, report your findings. The holographic image of a sleek, ethereal spy materialized at the center of the chamber. Unlike Dr. Zephyra's stable form, Silvera's body constantly shifted between different quantum states, making her nearly impossible to detect with conventional sensors. Council leader, I have spent the last 6 months attempting to infiltrate human space and gather intelligence on their capabilities. Attempting? Asked Velnoth ominously. Human space is difficult to penetrate, Silvera admitted, her form flickering with what might have been embarrassment. Their ships seem to detect our presence regardless of stealth technology. When approached, they simply observe until the intruder leaves. However, I have managed to gather some information through long-range observation. She gestured, and new data appeared on the chamber's central display. Human industrial capacity is far beyond what we initially estimated. What appear to be primitive construction techniques are actually incredibly sophisticated manufacturing processes that we don't understand. Their ships aren't built, they're grown. Grown. Dr. Zephyra's scientific curiosity overcame her fear. Explain. Human vessels appear to be composed of a hybrid organic metallic material that self-assembles at the quantum level. The hulls are living structures that can adapt and respond to different threats. This explains why our weapons had no effect. The ships literally evolved defenses in real time. The implications sent waves of shock through the assembly. If human ships could adapt to any weapon, traditional military responses would be useless. Worse, it suggested that humanity's technology was based on principles completely alien to galactic civilization. There's more, continued Silvera. I observed construction facilities in the outer reaches of human space. They're building something massive. The energy signature suggests a structure roughly the size of a moon, but with capabilities I can't identify. General Mortak leaned forward, his cybernetic implants processing tactical possibilities. A weapon? Unknown. The construction appears to be nearing completion. Whatever its purpose, it will be operational within the next few months. Thymau felt a chill run through her body. If humanity was building something on that scale, it could only mean they were planning major expansion of their capabilities. Recommendations? We have 3 options, said Dr. Zephyra, her form stabilizing as she focused on the analysis. First, we can attempt to develop countermeasures to their technology. However, this would require understanding physics principles we currently consider impossible. Second option, asked Thymau. We can attempt diplomatic contact and negotiate a peaceful resolution. This assumes they are willing to communicate and that their intentions are as peaceful as their message suggested. And the third option? Dr. Zephyra's form dimmed noticeably. We can evacuate the galaxy and hope they don't follow. The assembly erupted in voices again, but this time the tone was different. Instead of anger and defiance, the dominant emotions were fear and desperation. Representatives who had spent their careers planning military campaigns now discussed evacuation routes. Species that had ruled entire sectors debated whether abandoning their homeworlds might be the only way to ensure survival. Silence, commanded Thymau, reactivating the sound field. We are the galactic hegemony. We have faced extinction events before and survived. We will find a solution to this crisis. What solution? Demanded Ambassador Kexmoth. They have weapons that violate physics. They have ships that evolve. They have industry that operates on principles we don't understand. What possible solution exists? Before Thymau could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Emergency lights bathed the assembly in red illumination as automated systems announced an incoming priority transmission. The main display shifted to show the calm face of Admiral Chun, exactly as he had appeared during his final communication with Admiral Zexterra. Leaders of the galactic hegemony, Chun said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I am Admiral Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. I am addressing you directly because your recent actions suggest you are planning further hostilities against humanity. Thymau felt her 4 hearts beating rapidly as she realized the implications. Humanity had not only detected the Council's emergency session, but had managed to penetrate their most secure communication networks. How did they? Chan continued as if he could hear her question. We are aware of your intelligence gathering activities. We know about your contingency planning. We have observed your military preparations. These actions concern us. General Mortak activated his personal communicator. Security, trace that transmission. Find out how they penetrated our networks. Chin's slight smile suggested he was aware of the general's efforts. Your networks are not as secure as you believe. However, we have not accessed them to gather intelligence or cause harm. We simply wish to deliver a message directly. What message? Thymau managed to ask. Humanity offers you a choice, Chin replied. You can accept our proposal for peaceful coexistence, or you can continue your current path toward confrontation. If you choose peace, we are prepared to share certain technologies that will benefit all galactic civilizations. If you choose conflict, we will defend ourselves as necessary. Dr. Zephyra rose from her seat. What technologies? Chun gestured, and The display around him changed to show technical specifications that made the assembled scientists gasp. Medical advances that can extend lifespans by orders of magnitude. Manufacturing techniques that can turn any raw material into any desired product. Transportation methods that make hyperspace travel look primitive. Energy systems that can provide unlimited power without environmental impact. In exchange for what? Asked Thymal suspiciously. Simple coexistence. We want to be left alone to develop our civilization without interference. In return, we will share our knowledge gradually and help all species advance beyond their current limitations. The offer was almost too good to be true, which made it deeply suspect. Ambassador Velnoth voiced what many were thinking. And if we refuse? Chin's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes grew colder. Then, we will ensure that humanity remains safe, whatever methods that requires. The transmission ended, leaving the assembly in stunned silence. The choice was clear, but impossible. Surrender their independence to a species they barely understood, or face extinction at the hands of weapons they couldn't comprehend. We need time to consider this proposal, Thymal announced to the chamber. I'm calling for a recess to allow each delegation to consult with their governments. As representatives filed out of the chamber in small groups, their conversations were subdued and fearful. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations found themselves reduced to the role of supplicants, begging for mercy from a species they had intended to destroy. Dr. Zephyra lingered after the others had left, her form flickering with deep concentration. Council leader, I have been analyzing the technical specifications they displayed. If those documents are genuine, humanity has achieved technological capabilities that should be impossible. Should be impossible, Thymal repeated. That seems to be humanity's specialty. There's something else, Zephyra continued. The energy signatures from their construction project match theoretical calculations for something I thought was purely science fiction, which is Zephyra's form stabilized completely, indicating maximum focus. They appear to be building a device capable of manipulating the fundamental constants of physics within a localized area. In simple terms, they could make their own laws of reality and impose them on surrounding space. Thymal stared at the scientist in growing horror. You're saying they could change the laws of physics? In a limited area, yes. It would explain how their ships violate known physical principles. They operate in localized zones where different physical laws apply. The implications were staggering. If humanity could alter physical laws at will, no defense was possible. Any weapon, any shield, any strategy could be rendered useless simply by changing the rules that govern their operation. How long before this device is operational? Thymal asked. Based on the construction rate I observed, perhaps 2 months. Maybe less if they accelerate the process. 2 months to decide the fate of galactic civilization. 2 months to choose between submission and extinction. As Thymal looked out at the empty chamber, she realized that the age of hegemony dominance was ending whether they chose to admit it or not. The only question was whether they would go quietly or take the galaxy down with them in a final, futile gesture of defiance. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galactic hegemony faced an enemy they could not intimidate, bribe, or defeat. They faced humanity, and humanity played by rules no one else understood. The galaxy held its breath and waited for its leaders to decide which path would lead to survival. The secret meeting took place aboard the mobile fortress Shadow of Dominion, hidden in the void between star systems where even the most advanced sensors would have difficulty detecting it. General Mortak had called together the most hardline military commanders from across the hegemony, species representatives who viewed humanity's offer not as an opportunity for peace, but as the ultimate insult to galactic order. Commander Vexenel of the Zek War Swarms paced the conference room with agitated movements, his compound eyes reflecting the harsh lighting. We cannot seriously be considering surrender to these things that build ships from scrap metal. Scrap metal that somehow destroyed our greatest fleet, reminded Admiral Kolseth of the Saurian Imperial Navy. The massive reptilian officers' scarred hide bore testament to countless battles, but even his veteran composure showed cracks of uncertainty. Perhaps we need to reconsider our understanding of their capabilities. General Mortak activated the holographic display at the center of the room, showing tactical analyses of the human fleet's performance during the Sol System battle. I've spent the last 6 months reviewing every second of sensor data from that engagement. The humans didn't just defeat us, they toyed with us. Explain, demanded Commander Thekvar of the Kethari Supremacy Fleet. Her cybernetic implants glowed as she processed the data streams. Look at the timing. Mortak highlighted specific moments in the battle. Human ships held back their most devastating weapons until our fleet had committed to specific formations. They allowed us to reveal all our capabilities before responding with minimum necessary force. This wasn't a desperate defense. It was a controlled demonstration. The assembled officers studied the data with growing unease. The human fleet's movements showed a level of tactical sophistication that suggested they had understood the hegemony's capabilities better than the hegemony understood their own. They've been watching us, realized Admiral Kolseth. Not just recently, but for years, maybe decades. They knew exactly what weapons we would bring and how we would use them. Commander Vexenael's mandibles clicked rapidly. Then, why reveal their capabilities at all? Why not continue the deception? Because they wanted to send a message, said Dr. Yulmaven, the ethereal military scientist whose translucent form flickered with streams of classified data. Not just to our fleet, but to the entire galaxy. They wanted everyone to know that human technology makes conventional warfare obsolete. General Mortak nodded grimly. Which brings us to why we're here. The Council is seriously considering accepting their terms. Complete submission in exchange for technological advancement. But I believe we have another option. He changed the display to show new intelligence gathered by deep cover operatives. While Agent Silvera focused on human industrial capabilities, my teams have been investigating something else. Human psychology and culture. Relevant how? Asked Commander Thekvar. Humans are not united, Mortak explained. Their species has a history of internal conflict spanning their entire recorded civilization. Wars, genocides, nuclear exchanges, they've tried to exterminate themselves repeatedly. This Admiral Chin speaks for something called the United Earth Defense Force, but our intelligence suggests significant political divisions within human society. Dr. Yulmaven's form brightened with interest. You're proposing to exploit internal human conflicts? Exactly. If we can identify and support human factions that oppose their current leadership, we might be able to turn their own people against them. Humans may have superior technology, but they're still vulnerable to political manipulation. The plan that emerged over the following hours was sophisticated and ruthless. Using captured communication frequencies and stolen identification codes, hegemony agents would make contact with human political dissidents. These groups would be provided with intelligence about their own government's activities and weapons that could threaten human ships from within their own space. The key, explained Mortak, is that we don't need to defeat their technology directly. We need to ensure that technology is never used against us. If human civilization collapses into civil war, their weapons become irrelevant. Admiral Kolseth raised a concern. What if their government becomes aware of our interference? Then we deny everything and claim rogue elements acted without authorization. Meanwhile, we begin evacuating our core worlds to systems beyond human detection range. If the plan fails, we retreat and rebuild. If it succeeds, we reclaim our dominant position in the galaxy. The conspirators spent 3 more days refining their strategy. Psychological profiles of human leaders were analyzed to identify potential pressure points. Communication networks were mapped to enable covert contact with dissident groups. Weapon systems were designed specifically to exploit what little they knew about human ship construction. What none of them realized was that their entire conversation was being monitored. Dr. Sarah Chun, Admiral Chen's sister and humanity's foremost expert in xenopsychology, sat at her lab aboard the research station Kepler's Dream, analyzing the hegemony officer's discussion in real time. The station's advanced sensors had detected the secret meeting the moment it began, and humanity's quantum encryption technology had broken through the aliens' communications security within minutes. Fascinating, she murmured to her research assistant, Dr. James Park. They still think in terms of conventional political structures. They assume human society operates like their hierarchical empires. Should we warn Admiral Chin? Asked Park, watching the hegemony officers plot their infiltration strategy. Not yet. Let them make the attempt. It will provide valuable data about their intelligence capabilities. Sarah Chin's expression was thoughtful rather than concerned. Besides, it might be educational for them to see how human society actually works. She activated a communication channel to Earth's Global Defense Council. This is Dr. Chun aboard Kepler's Dream. I'm transmitting intercepted intelligence regarding hegemony planning. They're going to attempt political infiltration within the next few weeks. The response came from Director Martinez, the civilian leader responsible for Earth's external affairs. Recommendations, Doctor? Let them try. We can learn more about their methods by observing them in action. Just make sure our people are prepared for contact attempts. Sarah turned back to the tactical display showing the hegemony's secret meeting. As a xenopsychologist, she found their planning process deeply revealing. These beings had built their entire civilization around concepts of dominance and submission, hierarchy, and control. The idea that a society might function through voluntary cooperation rather than imposed authority was literally incomprehensible to them. They're going to be very confused when they discover how human politics actually work, she told Park with a slight smile. 3 weeks later, the first hegemony contact attempts began. Using quantum encrypted transmissions that they believed were undetectable, alien agents reached out to various human political groups. The results were immediate and, from the hegemony perspective, baffling. Commander Vexenel monitored the operation from aboard his stealth ship in the Outer Sol system. His compound eyes tracked data streams showing contact attempts with human government dissidents, religious extremists, corporate rivals, and military separatists. Every group that should have been receptive to offers of alien support instead reported the contact attempts to their own authorities. Status report, he demanded from his intelligence officer. All contact attempts have failed, Commander. Human targets are not responding as predicted. Instead, they appear to be cooperating with their central authority structure. Impossible. Our psychological profiles clearly indicated multiple fractured power groups within human society. The intelligence officer's antennae twitched nervously. Commander, I'm receiving reports that our agents have been invited to formal meetings with human representatives. Invited? Yes, sir. Apparently, the human government wishes to discuss our proposals openly. Vexenel stared at the data in confusion. This was not how infiltration operations were supposed to work. Target populations should have responded with fear, greed, or ambition when offered alien support. Instead, humans seem to be treating the contact attempts as opportunities for communication rather than subversion. The formal meeting took place aboard a human space station at the edge of their solar system. Commander Vexenel, disguised through advanced holographic technology to appear human, found himself sitting across a conference table from 5 human representatives. Their leader introduced herself as Director Martinez. Commander Vexenel, she began without preamble. We appreciate your willingness to meet with us directly. Your recent communication attempts with various human groups have been quite informative. Vexenel's disguise flickered slightly as surprise disrupted his concentration. You know who I am? We've been monitoring your ship since it entered our system 3 weeks ago. We know about your mission, your orders, and your government's plan to destabilize human society. Martinez smiled pleasantly. We thought it would be more productive to discuss your concerns directly rather than play elaborate games of espionage. The commander felt a familiar chill of recognition. Once again, humans had demonstrated capabilities far beyond what intelligence had suggested. You've been monitoring our stealth technology? Commander, Your ship generates gravitational distortions that our sensors can detect from several light years away. Your stealth technology is quite visible to us. Another human representative, introduced as Dr. Park, activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of the alien vessel. We've also been intercepting and decoding your communications since you arrived. Vexenael's compound eyes widened as he realized the implications. If humans could detect and monitor hegemony stealth ships, then every covert operation for the past months have been observed and analyzed. What do you want? Director Martinez leaned forward. We want to understand why you believe destabilizing our society would benefit your people. Our analysis suggests that internal human conflict would actually be detrimental to both our civilizations. Detrimental? You have weapons that can eliminate our fleets. If your society collapses, those weapons become useless. Dr. Park exchanged glances with his colleagues. Commander, may I ask what you know about human technological development? You build ships from primitive materials using crude manufacturing processes, yet somehow these vessels possess capabilities that violate known physics. That's partially correct. Our manufacturing processes appear crude because you're observing the final assembly phase. The actual construction occurs at quantum scales using techniques your sensors can't detect. Dr. Park activated a new display showing the interior of a human shipyard. What you see as welding and metal fitting is actually the integration of quantum-constructed components in a macro-scale frameworks. The images showed human workers operating equipment that seemed impossibly advanced compared to the finished products. Devices that manipulated matter at the subatomic level, energy systems that drew power from quantum vacuum fluctuations, and manufacturing techniques that assemble materials one atom at a time according to predetermined quantum patterns. Our technology doesn't depend on centralized authority or political stability, explained Martinez. It's based on scientific principles that any human can learn and apply. Destroying our government wouldn't eliminate our capabilities. It would simply distribute them more widely. Commander Vexenael felt his certainty crumbling. Then, why maintain centralized command structures at all? Because coordination is more efficient than chaos. We choose to work together because it produces better results than working separately. Martinez activated another display showing human society from a broader perspective. What your intelligence gathering missed is that human cooperation is voluntary, not imposed. The images showed a civilization that operated on principles completely alien to hegemony thinking. Humans chose their leaders through competitive processes, changed their governments regularly through peaceful transitions, and maintained social order through shared agreements rather than hierarchical dominance. This doesn't match any known pattern of social organization, Vexenael protested. Which is why your infiltration attempts failed, said Dr. Park. You contacted human groups that you thought were opposed to our current leadership. Instead, you found groups that disagree with specific policies, but support the overall system. When offered alien assistance, they reported the contacts because they view external interference as a threat to their freedom to choose their own path. Director Martinez stood and walked to a viewport showing Earth in the distance. Commander, your people are operating under a fundamental misunderstanding about human nature. We don't maintain social order through fear of authority. We maintain it because we choose to. That makes us much more stable than your intelligence assumed, but also much more flexible than your models predicted. The implications were staggering. If human society was genuinely stable and voluntarily organized, then traditional methods of political manipulation would be useless. Worse, it suggested that humanity had achieved something the hegemony had never imagined possible: a technological civilization based on cooperation rather than dominance. What happens now? Vexenael asked. Now you return to your leaders with a better understanding of what you're actually facing, Martinez replied. Human technology isn't our greatest strength. Our social cohesion is. We can share our technological advances because we trust each other to use them responsibly. That trust is what makes us more powerful than any weapon. As Commander Vexanael prepared to leave, Dr. Park handed him a data storage device. This contains detailed information about human social organization, technological development, and cultural principles. Your leaders need to understand what they're really dealing with. Why give us this information? Because understanding leads to better decisions. We hope your people will choose peaceful coexistence once they realize that conflict with humanity is not in their best interests. The return journey to hegemony space gave Commander Vexanael time to study the human data in detail. What he discovered challenged every assumption about how technological civilizations developed and maintained themselves. Humans had achieved capabilities that should have required authoritarian control, yet they had done so through voluntary cooperation. By the time his ship reached the mobile fortress, Vexanael had reached a disturbing conclusion. The hegemony had never truly understood what it meant to be an advanced civilization. They had achieved technological superiority through conquest and exploitation, but humans had achieved it through collaboration and innovation. The difference was not just tactical, it was fundamental, and it meant that humanity represented something the hegemony had never encountered before, a completely alien approach to existence itself. General Mortak received Vexanael's report in his private quarters, away from the other conspirators. As he reviewed the human data, his expression grew increasingly grim. Everything they had planned was based on assumptions that were not just wrong, but incomprehensibly wrong. "Sir," Vexanael concluded his briefing, "I don't believe we can defeat them using conventional methods. Their society is structured in ways that make traditional warfare irrelevant." Mortak stared at the data for a long moment. "Then, we'll have to try unconventional methods." "What do you mean?" The general activated a secured communication channel that connected him to the most classified project in hegemony space. Dr. Keelthara, status report on Project Stellar Void. The response came from a research facility hidden in a dead star system, where the hegemony's most dangerous scientists worked on weapons too terrible for conventional warfare. "General, the prototype is nearing completion. We estimate 2 weeks until initial testing can begin. Accelerate the timeline. We may need that weapon sooner than planned." As Vexanael left the meeting, he couldn't shake the feeling that the general was making a terrible mistake. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that defied understanding, yet Mortak still believed that sufficient force could solve their problems. But the commander's time among humans had taught him something his military training had never considered. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy was the one that didn't want to fight at all. And humanity seemed determined to avoid conflict, even if it meant sharing their most advanced technologies with civilizations that had tried to destroy them. The question was whether the hegemony would be wise enough to accept that gift or foolish enough to destroy itself, trying to reject it. Project Stellar Void represented the pinnacle of hegemony weapons research, a device so destructive that its very existence had been classified beyond the highest security levels. Hidden within a dying star system, the research facility sprawled across 17 asteroids, connected by quantum-shielded corridors that protected the scientists from their own creations. Dr. Keelthara, the project's lead researcher, stood before the massive device that had consumed 15 years of her life. The ethereal scientist's translucent form flickered with patterns of deep concentration as she made final adjustments to systems that operated on principles borrowed from ancient, extinct civilizations. Status report. She called to her team of specialists recruited from across the galaxy. "Quantum resonance chambers are stable," reported DR. Hexthan, a Zek physicist whose compound eyes track data streams from dozens of monitoring devices. "Dark matter accumulation is proceeding within acceptable parameters. Temporal displacement matrices are synchronized," added Dr. Vorthake, a Saurian engineer whose massive claws manipulated controls designed for more delicate appendages. "Paradox safeguards are active and functioning." Keelthara nodded, her attention focused on the central display that showed the weapon's current status. Project Stellar Void was not simply another planet killer or star destroyer. It was something far more ambitious and terrifying, a device designed to retroactively erase targets from history itself. The concept was theoretically elegant and practically horrifying. By manipulating quantum information at the most fundamental level, the weapon could alter the past in ways that prevented target civilizations from ever developing advanced technology. It wouldn't just destroy humanity, it would ensure that humans never evolved beyond primitive tool use. Dr. Kielthra called her assistant, Dr. Nal Vesh, were receiving a priority transmission from General Mortak. The general's scarred face appeared on the communication screen, his cybernetic implants glowing with urgency. Doctor, what is your current timeline for weapon deployment? General, we require another 6 weeks for final calibration. The temporal matrices are incredibly delicate, and any miscalculation could result in paradoxes that might erase our own civilization along with the target. Unacceptable. Accelerate the process. I need this weapon operational within 72 hours. Kielthra's form flickered with alarm. Sir, that's impossible. The safety protocols alone require. Override the safety protocols. The humans are building something in their system that could threaten our ability to deploy the weapon at all. If we wait, we may lose our only opportunity to eliminate them. The communication ended, leaving the research team in stunned silence. Deploying Project Stellar Void without proper calibration wasn't just dangerous. It was potentially catastrophic. Temporal weapons required precise coordination of quantum fields that could easily cascade out of control if improperly managed. Doctor, said Hex then quietly, should we comply with the general's orders? Kielthra stared at the weapon that had consumed most of her career. She had created it to ensure hegemony survival against any conceivable threat, but using it prematurely could endanger everything they were trying to protect. Begin acceleration protocols. We'll compress the calibration period as much as possible, but I won't sacrifice basic safety measures. What none of them realized was that their entire conversation was being monitored by human sensors operating on principles that made hegemony security measures irrelevant. The temporal weapon's quantum signatures had been detected the moment it was activated, and humanity had been observing its development with considerable interest. Dr. Sarah Chun reviewed the intelligence data from her laboratory aboard the research station Kepler's Dream. As humanity's foremost expert in theoretical physics, she had immediately recognized the significance of the Hegemony's project. They've actually built a functional temporal manipulation device, she told her research team. Primitive by our standards, but workable. Should we be concerned? Asked Dr. Park, studying the weapon's specifications. Their targeting systems seem designed specifically for retroactive civilization elimination. In theory, yes. In practice, they've made several critical errors in their calculations. Sarah highlighted specific sections of the captured data. Their understanding of temporal mechanics is based on linear causality models that became obsolete decades ago. They don't understand that time isn't actually linear at quantum scales. Dr. Martinez, who had joined the meeting via quantum communication from Earth, leaned forward with interest. Explain the implications, please. They believe they can alter the past to prevent human technological development. What they don't realize is that human technology exists partially outside normal temporal flow. Our quantum manufacturing processes create materials that are temporally locked. They exist in all time periods simultaneously. Sarah activated a holographic display showing humanity's true technological capabilities. Unlike the primitive-appearing ships the hegemony had observed, this display revealed the underlying quantum architecture that made human technology possible. Our ships aren't just built to unusual specifications. They're constructed using principles that operate independently of normal causality. Meaning, their temporal weapon could successfully alter Earth's history, but it wouldn't affect human technology that already exists. Our ships, space stations, and manufacturing facilities would remain functional because they exist in quantum states that are immune to retroactive changes. Dr. Park frowned as he processed the implications. So their weapon would succeed in changing human history, but fail to eliminate the threat they're trying to remove. Worse than that, if they alter Earth's timeline, they'll create a paradox cascade that could destabilize local space-time. The resulting temporal distortions would make their own existence uncertain. Director Martinez activated her personal communicator. Dr. Chun, recommend immediate response protocols. We need to prevent them from using the weapon, both for their safety and ours. Temporal cascade failures are unpredictable, and we don't want to risk damage to the local galactic group. Can we disable the device remotely? Sarah studied the technical specifications for several minutes. Not disable, but we can modify their calibration to ensure the weapon functions safely. The question is whether we should intervene directly or attempt communication first. What would you recommend? Direct intervention. If we try to explain the dangers, they'll assume we're attempting to manipulate them. Better to fix their calculations quietly and let them discover the problems on their own. The modification process required 3 of humanity's most advanced quantum manipulation vessels to approach the Hegemony Research Facility undetected. Using stealth technology that operated by existing partially outside normal space-time, the ships positioned themselves around the asteroid complex and began subtle alterations to the temporal weapon's quantum resonance patterns. Dr. Keelthera noticed the changes immediately. Something's wrong with the quantum field harmonics, she announced to her team. The resonance patterns are shifting without external input. Equipment failure, suggested Dr. Hexthan. No, these changes are too precise to be random malfunctions. Someone is deliberately modifying our calibration. Keelthera activated every sensor array in the facility, searching for signs of external interference. There, gravitational distortions approximately 50,000 kilometers from the primary asteroid. Something is out there. The research team watched in growing amazement as their scanners revealed the human ships. The vessels were visible only when they chose to be, flickering in and out of detectability as if they existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. How long have they been there? Asked Dr. Vorthake. Unknown. Their technology makes temporal tracking impossible. Keelthera stared at the display, showing human ships casually operating within the most secure facility in hegemony space. They're not attacking. They are helping. Helping. Look at the modifications they're making. They're correcting calculation errors in our temporal matrices. Errors that would have resulted in uncontrolled paradox cascades. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only detected the hegemony's most classified weapon project, but had recognized the dangers involved and taken action to prevent a catastrophic failure. They were protecting their enemies from their own weapons. Dr. Keelthera called her communication officer. We're receiving a transmission from one of the human vessels. The face that appeared on the screen was familiar from intelligence reports. Admiral Chun, the human leader who had destroyed the hegemony's grand fleet. However, his expression held none of the cold calculation from their previous encounter. Instead, he looked concerned, almost worried. Dr. Keelthera, I am Admiral Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. We need to discuss the temporal weapon you're developing. Keelthera found her voice after a moment of shock. How did you penetrate our security? Your facility generates quantum signatures that are detectable from several light years away. We've been monitoring your progress for the past 6 months. Chin's tone was matter-of-fact rather than threatening. Doctor, your weapon design contains fundamental flaws that could endanger both our civilizations. You're trying to manipulate us into abandoning our only effective weapon against you. Chin shook his head slowly. Doctor, we could have destroyed this facility at any time during the past 6 months. Instead, we've been working to ensure your weapon functions safely. We're not your enemies. We're trying to prevent you from accidentally destroying yourselves. Keelthera studied the data streaming from her monitoring systems. The human modifications to her weapon were indeed corrections, not sabotage. They had identified calculation errors that would have resulted in temporal feedback loops, paradox cascades that could have unraveled local space-time. Why, she asked. Why help us build a weapon designed to eliminate your species? Because we understand temporal mechanics better than you do, and we know your weapon won't work the way you think it will. Shin gestured, and new data appeared on Keelthara's displays. Your device operates on linear temporal models. Reality doesn't work that way. The information Chun provided revealed human understanding of temporal mechanics that was centuries beyond hegemony science. Time wasn't a simple linear progression that could be altered through brute force manipulation. Instead, it was a complex quantum structure with built-in stability mechanisms that prevented paradoxes through dimensional branching. Your weapon will successfully create an alternate timeline where human civilization develops differently, Chen explained. However, our current timeline will remain unchanged. You'll simply create a parallel universe while leaving your original problem unsolved. Dr. Hex then studied the human data with growing excitement. The quantum mathematics are elegant. They've solved problems we didn't even know existed. There's more, continued Chun. If you proceed with your current calibration, the temporal backlash will affect your own civilization. The hegemony exists in the same temporal framework as humanity. Altering our timeline will create retroactive changes in yours. Keelthara felt cold understanding wash over her. You're saying the weapon would eliminate both civilizations? Not eliminate, change. You might find yourselves in a timeline where the hegemony never achieved spaceflight, or where your species developed along completely different evolutionary paths. The changes would be unpredictable. The research team exchanged glances of growing alarm. They'd spent 15 years developing a weapon that could accidentally erase their own civilization from existence. Only human intervention had prevented them from triggering their own destruction. Dr. Keelthara, Chun continued, we're prepared to share our understanding of temporal mechanics with your team. This technology could benefit both civilizations if used properly. What do you mean? Controlled temporal manipulation allows for fascinating possibilities. You could observe alternate histories, study different evolutionary pathways, even communicate with parallel versions of your own civilizations. The key is understanding that time is a tool, not a weapon. The offer was almost incomprehensible. Humanity was providing advanced scientific knowledge to the people trying to destroy them. It violated every principle of military strategy and political logic. Why would you share such dangerous knowledge? Asked Dr. Vorthake. Because dangerous knowledge becomes safe knowledge when it's properly understood. We'd rather have you working with accurate information than stumbling around with theories that could accidentally destroy the galaxy. Admiral Chen's image disappeared, but the human ships remained in their positions around the research facility. They weren't guards or threats. They were observers, waiting to see what the hegemony scientists would choose to do with their new understanding. Dr. Keelthara spent the next several hours reviewing the human data, cross-referencing their temporal mechanics with 15 years of her own research. Everything she thought she understood about time manipulation required fundamental revision. The weapon she had built could work, but only if operated with safeguards and principles she had never imagined. What are your orders, Doctor? Asked Dr. Hexthan. Keelthara looked at the temporal weapon that had consumed most of her career, then at the human data that revealed how limited her understanding had been. Stand down all weapons systems. Begin analysis of human temporal mechanics. If we're going to continue this project, we're going to do it correctly. And General Mortak's orders? General Mortak ordered us to build a functional temporal weapon. He didn't specify that it had to be designed to destroy humanity. Keelthara's form flickered with what might have been amusement. Perhaps it's time our leaders learned what they're actually fighting against. As the research team began implementing human safety protocols, none of them noticed the quantum communication pulse that transmitted their entire conversation to General Mortak's flagship. The general received Dr. Keelthara's report with growing rage, but also with a terrible understanding. Humanity wasn't just technologically superior. They were operating on principles of existence that made traditional concepts of conflict meaningless. They could have destroyed the hegemony's most advanced weapon project, but instead, they had improved it. They could have eliminated their enemies, but instead they were trying to educate them. For a military commander trained in conquest and dominance, such behavior was not just incomprehensible, it was terrifying. How could you fight an enemy that refused to be your enemy? How could you defeat a civilization that responded to attacks with offers of friendship? General Mortax stared out at the stars and realized that the hegemony was facing something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had evolved beyond the need for conflict. And that evolution made them more dangerous than any weapon ever conceived. The question was whether the hegemony could evolve as well, or whether they would choose destruction over adaptation. General Mortac stood alone in his private quarters aboard the flagship Iron Dominance, staring at intelligence reports that chronicled the complete collapse of every military strategy the hegemony had attempted against humanity. 3 separate operations, direct assault, political infiltration, and temporal manipulation, had all failed not through human opposition, but through human assistance. The irony was crushing. Each time the hegemony had developed a plan to destroy humanity, the humans had detected it, analyzed it, and then helped make it work better. They had corrected the flaws in the temporal weapon, provided intelligence about their own society to frustrated infiltrators, and responded to military aggression with offers of technological advancement. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. The holographic display activated to show Council Leader Thymao, her blue skin pale with exhaustion and her 4 eyes dim with defeat. General, she began without preamble, the Council has reached a decision. We are formally accepting humanity's terms for peaceful coexistence. Mortac felt something break inside his chest. We cannot surrender to primitives who build ships from scrap metal. General, those primitives have technology that makes our most advanced weapons look like stone tools. They have offered us partnership instead of demanding submission. We would be fools to reject such an opportunity. Partnership? Mortac's cybernetic implants flared with angry light. They destroyed our greatest fleet. They penetrated our most secure facilities. They've demonstrated that they can defeat anything we deploy against them. This isn't partnership. It's domination disguised as friendship. Thymal's expression softened slightly. General, perhaps you should speak with Dr. Keelthera before making final judgments. Her report on human temporal technology is illuminating. The communication ended, leaving Mortac alone with his rage and confusion. He activated a private channel to the temporal weapons facility, where Dr. Keelthera appeared on his screen, surrounded by displays showing impossible mathematical equations. Doctor, he said through gritted teeth, explain to me how we went from possessing the ultimate weapon to accepting defeat without firing a shot. Keelthera's translucent form flickered as she considered how to explain concepts that challenged fundamental assumptions about reality. General, the humans didn't defeat our weapon. They improved it. The modifications they made don't prevent it from functioning. They ensure it functions correctly. Correctly? Our original design would have created paradox cascades that could have unraveled the fabric of space-time itself. The humans provided safeguards that allow controlled temporal manipulation without risking universal collapse. Mortac studied the technical data streaming across his display, but the mathematics were beyond his understanding. Are you saying they made our weapon more dangerous? I'm saying they made our weapon actually work instead of accidentally destroying everything in existence. Keelthera highlighted specific calculations. General, humanity's understanding of temporal mechanics is so advanced that they could have prevented us from ever developing this technology in the first place. Instead, they helped us build it safely. Why? Because they want us to have access to the same scientific capabilities they possess. They're not trying to maintain technological superiority. They're trying to share technological advancement. The concept was so alien to hegemony, thinking that Mortac struggled to process it. No species shares military technology with potential enemies. They don't consider us enemies, General. They consider us neighbors who happen to be going through a difficult phase of development. Before Mortac could respond, alarms began sounding throughout his ship. His tactical officer's voice echoed through the command center. General, We have multiple contacts approaching our position. Configuration unknown. Mortak rushed to the bridge, expecting to see human warships arriving to demand surrender. Instead, his screen showed something unprecedented, a mixed fleet of human and hegemony vessels traveling together. The human ships' familiar angular profiles flew in formation with Cathari cruisers, Zek bio ships, Saurian dreadnoughts, and ethereal energy craft. Open a communication channel, he ordered. Admiral Chen appeared on the main view screen, but he wasn't alone. Standing beside him were Admiral Zefkar of the Cathari Navy, Commander Hivemind Veltana of the Zek Collective, Dreadnought Master Skarthak of the Saurian Empire, and Energy Shaper Lamera of the Ethereal Consortium. General Mortak, Chen began, we've come to invite you to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. Which is? Zefkar stepped forward, her blue skin bright with excitement. The first joint operation between human and hegemony forces, General. We're going to save a dying star system. The explanation that followed challenged everything Mortak thought he understood about interstellar politics. A red giant star in the Kepler 438 system was undergoing premature collapse, threatening to destroy 3 inhabited worlds and 17 industrial installations. Traditional evacuation would save most of the population, but abandon centuries of cultural development and technological infrastructure. The humans have proposed an alternative, explained Commander Voltana, her insectoid features animated with enthusiasm. Using combined human and hegemony technology, we can stabilize the star and preserve the system. Ow! Admiral Chen activated a holographic display showing the planned operation. Human temporal manipulation technology can create localized time dilation fields that slow the star's collapse. Cathari plasma lance arrays can remove excess stellar material. Zek biotechnology can seed the star with organisms that regulate fusion reactions. Saurian gravitational disruptors can fine-tune the stellar magnetic field.